Hi. Welcome to week 2 of First Trinity's 2023 All-Church Study on C.S. Lewis' book, Mere Christianity. My name is Sue Stagey, and I am super excited about this. I am excited to be with you, and let's get going. This is week 2 of our study, but it's the first week that we've actually asked you to read a section of the book. Book 1, as Lewis calls the first section, and the title for it is Right and Wrong as a Clue to the Meaning of the Universe. I think it's important to point out that this section is not talking about Christianity yet at all. That comes in the next section. In fact, on page 29, which is near the end of the section we read for today, C.S. Lewis says, "We have not yet got as far as the God of any actual religion, still less the God of that particular religion called Christianity. We've only got as far as a somebody or a something behind the moral law." Lewis is setting up the problem that Christianity solves. He's asking us to reflect on the idea that there is a law of right and wrong in the universe, and we are unable to keep it. I want to tell you a story from when I was very young, I think 5 or 6 years old. I had a pretty little red purse that I carried everywhere I went. And one day, I went to the grocery store with my mom, and while we were in the produce section, I noticed the Brock's candy display, sort of like the bulk section these days. I carefully helped myself to 2 pieces of candy that I had not paid for and slid them into that little red purse. Now, what I think is fascinating about this story is I have no memory of, and I doubt that my mom and dad had yet taught me about the word stealing or taught me that I shouldn't steal. But the guilt and fear of my actions, I felt right away in that moment. When we got home, my purse was on the floor in the back seat, and my mom reached back to get the purse to carry it in for me, and I freaked out because I was sure she'd be able to tell there were 2 pieces of candy in there. Her spidey sense told her to check the purse, and we were on our way to a lesson about stealing that involved a trip back to the store to apologize to the store manager. My little 5-year-old self had already sensed that there is a law of right and wrong in the universe, and I was not keeping it. I have to tell you, I've struggled with how to teach about this first section of Mere Christianity, and I think it boils down to 2 things. First, it is really pre-Christian thinking, and I'm a person who has been a Christian her whole life. I don't remember a time when I didn't know about Jesus and believe that he loves me and forgives me and calls me to follow him into the world. It's a wonderful gift to know that my whole life, but it also makes it hard for me to think in a way that someone who does not know that thinks. Have you noticed yet that Lewis does not quote the Bible in this book? Remember that he was originally on the BBC, the public radio in Britain, giving these talks. It makes so much sense that a person who does not yet know Jesus would not necessarily be persuaded by his word, which are the norm and rule for those of us who do believe. If you are in this study and you do not consider yourself a Christian, or you came to know Christ later in your life, I am so very glad you're here. You bring a good gift to your study group today. You can help people understand what it is like before you know Jesus and how you thought or think about him and what intellectual or emotional barriers there are for those who do not yet know Jesus. Lewis is proposing that no matter what religion you claim, or whether you claim one at all, we can agree that there is a sense of right and wrong that every human being feels. It's how we were created. Do you believe this? It seems to me that we have sometimes credited that uneasy, guilty feeling we have with unhealthy parenting, or bad theology, or unfair discipline practices, without denying the reality of those things, because they do happen, I also see that some of our guilt comes from this. We sense that we know right from wrong, and yet we often do not choose the right. Paul talks about this in Romans 7, starting at verse 15. Here's what he says. See if you can relate. For I do not understand my own actions. For I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree with the law that it is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing. And now we come to the second reason I have struggled with how to teach this first section of Mere Christianity. It's mostly bad news. And I am not a fan of bad news. Lewis does a beautiful job of laying out what we Lutherans would call the law. The law is both what is required of us by God and the fact that we can't carry it out. The law is a weight too heavy for us to bear, and our attempts to make it better are flimsy and ineffective at best. Lutheran theologian Chad Bird, I think, gives a great description of this. And this quote, you're going to talk about it in your study group today. It's actually on the second page of your handout in italics. What's really wrong with you? When diagnosing what's spiritually wrong with us, we tend to act like the pseudo-doctors who flunked out of medical school. We dig no deeper than surface symptoms and therefore prescribe woefully inadequate medicines. Lung cancer gets treated with cough syrup, shattered femurs with a Band-Aid and aspirin. Our real problem, the deep and basic problem of humanity, is not cheating, stealing, or lying. It's not murdering or hating. Of course, those are bad. But they are, in all truth, symptoms of a profoundly worse problem. These are sins, but they are not the capital S sin. Who we are produces what we do, not vice versa. We sin, the effect, because we are sinners, the cause. We are not sinners because we sin. I think Lewis is inviting us to consider, before we reflect on whether Jesus is who he says he is, that's next week, I can't wait, we reflect on who we are. We reflect on our condition, the world's condition. As the title of the final chapter in this section says, we have cause to be uneasy. I don't think it's a stretch to say that every one of us has tried to be better and failed. I don't think it's a stretch that those of us who have been parents have seen their children try to be better and fail. I don't think it's a stretch to look around our world today and see that it's broken. Unless the force that wrote this law on our hearts is a good and kind God who is willing to satisfy its requirements on behalf of his children, we are in dire straits. Listen to what Paul says in that same section I read earlier. Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? I can't resist telling you this week what you will explore in depth next week. He is that good and kind God. But for today, in your groups, you will explore that sense of right and wrong and talk about whether you agree that all humans have it. We will look at scriptures as we do every week. God's word is full of truth and grace and helps us as we walk through this broken world. Your group is a God-given resource for that same journey. Have a great conversation.